Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today I'm going to do a recap of the Baseball Maelstrom World Series that ended, the middle of last week. We'll take a look at each game, take a look at the stats, and that kind of thing. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you had a chance to view the World Series. You can find all of those recorded games here on my YouTube channel. Games 5 and 6, I had a little bit of a video quality issue that I didn't realize, and so those are not in HD quality, but you can still listen along and hear what's happening with my play-by-play and commentary. In any event, as a recap, the Detroit Rockets, who came in as the underdog in the series, especially because they didn't do as well against left-handed pitching, and the St. Louis Wizards, two of their three World Series starters were left-handed pitchers. That, in addition to the fact that the Wizards had the better record overall, even though there was no intra-league play, and their offense was nearly as good on paper, and their pitching was way better on paper. So with all of that considered, the Wizards came in as the favorites, but that is not how things turned out, which is why you play the games. By the way, you can find all of the stats over at baseballmaelstrom.com. Here in the top, you can click on this season stats to get the stats for the season, the complete season, which was a 54-game season between the 8 teams with no interleague play. 3 AL and 3 NL Hall of Fame teams made up of Hall of Famers from the American League and the National League, and then 1 team of non-Hall of Famers in each league. And in fact, the Detroit Rockets were the non-Hall of Fame team in the American League, and happened to win it all. So, and then you can click on this to get the World Series stats that I'm going to be covering here in a minute. So if you're looking to take a look or dive deeper on your own, or if there's something I didn't cover, that's where you would find that. But let's just give a quick recap. So Game 1, which St. Louis Wizards had home field advantage. Game 1 was a close game, kind of set the tone for the entire series, but it was a close game. Detroit scored in each of the first 3 innings. This was Roger Clemens facing off against Carl Hubble, the left-handed starter for St. Louis. Clemens allowed just 2 earned runs in 7 innings, struck out 5, allowed 7 hits. Hubble, who had the best ERA in the entire Maelstrom, or no, Hubble didn't. Hubble had the best record. He was 9-1, and that's why he got Game 1 starting. So he came in 9-1 with a sub-3 ERA. The Detroit offense was a little too much for him. He allowed just 3 earned runs in 7 innings, but 12 hits. He did strike out 7. But the Detroit Rockets scored in each of the first 3 innings, starting with Alex Rodriguez's home run in the first. They scored again in the second on 3 singles, and then they scored again in the third. That one was unearned, thanks to an error there by Ron Santo. And St. Louis, though, got right back into it with a 3-earned homer from Larry Walker in the bottom of the third. But then in the 6th, Detroit scored again, thanks to, again, 3 straight singles, capped off by Bobby Grich. So Bobby Grich, who hadn't really gotten much playing time during the regular season, was 2 for 4 with 2 of the 4 RBI that the Detroit Rockets had this game. And so Detroit held on for a very close game. The relievers were good all the way around. Fergie Jenkins allowed just 1 hit in 2 innings of relief work for the Wizards. And then you had the 1-2 punch for the Rockets, which would prove, it was great during the regular season, and it continued in the postseason. Dan Quisenberry and Tom Henke, a great 1-2 punch here for the Rockets, held the Wizards hitless in the 8th and 9th inning to not even make it close, not give them a chance to get back into this one. So the other thing kind of about the first game was there were 5 errors, so that was kind of interesting. Each team had an unearned run. But overall, the Detroit Rockets pulled out this game in St. Louis to lead off the series and take that 1-0 series lead. So we headed to game 2. St. Louis trying to bounce back. And this was the marathon game. The starters for this one were Brett Saberhagen for the Rockets, Juan Marichal for the Wizards, and of course, Marichal, he was the one that had the best ERA in the league. And so big expectations from him, and he actually delivered for the most part. He allowed 11 hits, though, in 8 innings. So again, Detroit was getting lots of hits, but he held them to 2 runs in this case. A 2-run single from A-Rod in the 3rd was the only 2 runs that he allowed. Meanwhile, Saberhagen allowed 4 earned runs in his 8 innings of work, despite only allowing 8 hits. No errors in this one. And 3 of those runs came in the 2nd inning when Saberhagen not only walked in a run, but then allowed a 2-run single to Gwynn right after that. They added an insurance run with Rogers Hornsby's home run in the 8th. And so they took a 4-2 lead into the 9th, and out came Bruce Sutter, who was their star closer this season, the Wizards' star closer. And so it looked like the Wizards were going to head to Detroit with a 1-1, tying up the series here 1-1, because Sutter was pretty great during the regular season. But again, that is not what happened. Sutter allowed a leadoff double to Lou Whitaker. Kenny Lofton singled to put runners on the corners. He did strike out Ichiro, but then Alex Rodriguez hit an RBI single to cut the lead to 4-3. He struck out Dick Allen, so it looked like he still had a chance to get out of it. But then Mark McGwire was pinch hitting in the 9th, and McGwire hit an RBI double to tie things up. Now, Sutter would strike out Blackwell to get out of the inning, but not before the Rockets tied things up. So Sutter got the blown save. And then after that, we had 4 scoreless innings of relief. Again, Quisenberry, 2 innings of scoreless relief for him. Louis Tiant added 2 innings of scoreless relief. And on the Wizards side, we have 3 scoreless innings from John Smoltz. And then Warren Spahn had 1 scoreless inning before the top of the 14th when he retired Dick Allen and Mark McGwire for the first 2 outs. But then things kind of fell apart. He allowed a double to Charlie Blackwell, and then Bobby Veach homered to put Detroit up by 2. And then he could not get out of the inning. He allowed a base hit to Thurman Munson. He walked Lou Whitaker. And then he was pulled at that point for Fergie Jenkins. But that's not where things ended, because Jenkins then allowed a single to Kenny Lofton and Ichiro Suzuki back-to-back, and a 2-run double to Alex Rodriguez. All told, Detroit scored 6 runs in the 14th. Now, the Wizards did get 1 back in the bottom of the 14th when Stan Musial homered, but it was too little too late, and Detroit took this one 10-5 in 14 innings. So rather than the Wizards going back or going to Detroit with an even series, they went back to Detroit down 2-0. So facing that in the first game in Detroit, they actually bounced back. This one was Steve Carlton against Frank Tanana, 2 lefties facing off against one another. And Carlton once again allowed just 2 earned runs and 6 hits in 8 innings while striking out 10. And those 2 runs came on back-to-back homers in the first inning from Alex Rodriguez and Dick Allen. And that's really the only runs the Rockets would get off of Carlton. Meanwhile, St. Louis had a good string of innings there, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, where they scored all 7 of their runs off of Frank Tanana. We had a couple of and most of those were home runs. So we had a solo shot from Chipper Jones, a 3-run homer from Mike Piazza, another 2-run homer from Mike Piazza. So Piazza had 5 of their 7 runs there in the 4th and the 6th inning. And Chipper had the other 2. So St. Louis wins this one handily 7-3. Not really even close. They were down 7-2 in the ninth. They did score a run there in the ninth, but by then, Charlie Blackwell homer, by the way, but by then it was too late. So the St. Louis felt like they kind of got back into it here. Heading into Game 4, St. Louis was just down 2-1. But Game 4 was a repeat of the Game 1 starters, Hubble and Clemens, and this time Clemens was even better than he was in the first game. He allowed just one earned run on 5 hits in 7 innings. Hubble, meanwhile, allowed 6 earned runs in his 7 innings of work. 4 of those came in the second inning. Bobby Grich hit a 3-run homer there in the second. Grich kind of, again, another standout performance as he went 2 for 4 with 3 RBI in this one. Again, the Wizards had 2 errors in here, so, that wasn't good. And Detroit took a 6-1 lead into the ninth, where Dave Stieb allowed a leadoff homer in the ninth to Rogers Hornsby. But that was all they would get, as Quisenberry had another inning of scoreless relief to kind of shut the door on any comeback chances. So Detroit were up 3-1 after 4 games and had a chance to close things out in Detroit in Game 5. Clemens came through in the clutch in this one. So we headed Game 5, and the Wizards got their revenge in this one against Brett Saberhagen, who, again, remember, wasn't very sharp in Game 2, but pitched well enough. Juan Marichal, though, was good in Game 2, and he was even better in Game 5 here, with allowing just 1 earned run in 8 innings, striking out 5. Meanwhile, they jumped all over Saberhagen for 7 runs in 3 1/3. They scored 3 more against Tiant, a couple against Urban Shocker. Tom Henke came in to kind of stop the bleeding and pitched 2 scoreless innings, but the game was out of hand by then. So the Wizards took this one 12-1. They out-hit the Rockets 17-7. And it did give them a glimmer of hope, because here they were still down 2-3, but they were heading back to St. Louis. Carlton on the mound, who had been so great earlier in the series. And if he could win, then they would force a Game 7. And could Hubble really be beat 3 games when he was 9-1 during the regular season? That was the question. The other notable performance in this one, Rogers Hornsby. 2 2-run homers. He went 4 for 5 in this one. So he was just hitting really well in this one. But needless to say, we headed to Game 6, and Frank Tanana did something special in this one. Detroit, again, trying to close things out. St. Louis really needed something to get something going to force that Game 7. Carlton didn't pitch too poorly. He had one bad inning, if you will, where he allowed 3 earned runs in the 4th. Manny Ramirez led things off with a solo shot. Charlie Blackwell had an RBI double. Kenny Lofton had an RBI single. That's really all Carlton would allow, is 3 earned runs. He struck out 8 in 7 innings, allowed 8 hits. Detroit would score another run in the 8th off of Fergie Jenkins. Fergie Jenkins allowing 3 straight singles to lead off the 8th before John Smoltz came in to kind of shut things down and get out of that inning. So Smoltz pitched 2 scoreless innings himself. But Frank Tanana walked Oscar Charleston to lead off the game and then retired 21 straight batters, as you can see here. 2 strikeouts, 1 strikeout, 2 strikeouts, 2 strikeouts. So he struck out 7. Couple of perfect innings there. Struck out Cepeda in the 7th here, so he struck out 8 overall, but he went into the 8th inning with a no-hitter. I actually thought something special might happen here. Of course, the second I let the words escape my mouth, Larry Walker hit a solo shot in the 8th. Not only ruined the no-hitter, but the shutout. Now, Detroit only had 4 runs, so they couldn't let things get out of hand. So when Tony Gwynn singled after the Larry Walker home run, Frank Tanana came out of the game, and Quisenberry came in. And Quisenberry and Henke once again were a great 1-2 punch here as they pitched 2 scoreless innings to close things out. Now, Quisenberry did allow a single to Mike Piazza, but then got Rogers Hornsby to ground into a double play and Ozzie Smith to pop out. And then Henke pitched a perfect 9th to win this one for Detroit 4-2, win the series, the World Series for Detroit, 4-2. And again, Tanana was on the verge of something spectacular, but it didn't quite happen. So if we head over here, again, if you click on World Series stats, you can get to this page. You can see that if we look at the batting, that Detroit over the course of the World Series hit .293, which is close to what their average was during the regular season. With a .426 slugging, they hit 7 homers. They did strike out 51 times. They had a positive steal ratio, 4 stolen bases to 2 caught. And let's take a look at their pitching. Their pitching had a .458 ERA, so not the greatest. Of course, a lot of that was due to one game where they allowed 12 earned runs, or 12 runs. So if you remove that, this ERA gets a lot better. And so if we compare St. Louis, we see that St. Louis's ERA was actually almost half a run better, .419 ERA, well above their team average. Their batting average, though, .240, so their hitting wasn't nearly what it was in the regular season. Detroit's batting was way better. That being said, each team, or actually I should say, the Wizards had twice as many homers as Detroit. Of course, again, a lot of those came in that one game where they won 12-1. Detroit only had 7 homers on the series. St. Louis had 14. So their on-base percentage was just slightly worse, but their slugging was way better, .485 compared to .426 for Detroit. Only 2 stolen bases and 1 caught, so they didn't steal or even attempt very often. But overall, they left 23 runners in scoring position. Detroit actually left more in scoring position, which just goes to show you how many times they were on base. And if you click on this, you can kind of see the breakdown. So Bobby Grich had 1 homer here. He drove in 5 and hit .412 over the World Series. Alex Rodriguez drove in 8. He hit only .286 though. 2 homers for Alex Rodriguez. I don't know. I think, I guess if I were to give the MVP to somebody, maybe Roger Clemens here, World Series MVP. He was 2-0 with a 193 ERA in his 2 games in the World Series. Of course, you had 9 innings of relief, scoreless relief from Tom Henke and Dan Quisenberry. They allowed only 4 hits combined between the two of them in those 9 innings, and no runs. So, I'd say maybe the pitching staff, the Detroit pitching staff, gets the nod here. You combine that with Tanana's near no hitter, and I think you have quite a bit to be happy about if you're Detroit's pitching staff. But I think I'd probably give it to Roger Clemens. He was 2-0, 2 key games when they needed him. With he only allowed 3 earned runs in those 2 games, so that's probably who I would give it to. On the offensive side, you had Alex Rodriguez did drive in 8, but Bobby Grich just seemed to come in clutch whenever they needed him. He didn't play every game, but he played most of them, so he was 7 for 17, hit .412. 588 slugging, which was better even than Alex Rodriguez's slugging. Charlie Blackwell was the only one who had a better slugging percentage. His on base was just as good, 444. So, I probably would give it to Bobby Grich on the offensive side. If we want to take a look at St. Louis and see how they did overall, we can see that Rogers Hornsby led the team in hitting by a long shot. Well, he hit 417 with 4 homers, drove in 6. The only one that drove in more was Larry Walker, drove in 7. You had quite a few hitters here that were pretty good for St. Louis. Again, a lot of that was from that one big game. Mike Piazza was 3 for 8. He hit 375 with 2 homers. Both of those came during that big game. So, you remove that big game and things don't look quite as good. Big surprise, though, is Stan Musial, who was the leading offensive hitter on the Wizards during the regular season. And, I guess if you want to pin this on somebody, he only hit 179 in the World Series. He did hit 2 homers, but, he just didn't come in clutch when they needed him. And, they needed him to hit better than 179 in this series. The rest of the team can't carry all of the weight. The other thing I think of note is that the Bruce Sutter blown save was the only appearance that Sutter had in the entire postseason, because none of the other games were even really close enough for them to bring him in. And so, that was key. I guess if you had to pick somebody to be the GOAT of the, not greatest of all time, the GOAT of the World Series, it probably would be Stan or maybe Bruce Sutter. But then even Carl Hubble 0-2. He was 9-1 during the regular season. He couldn't come up with it here in the postseason. His 5.79 ERA. And then you had a lot of relievers that just didn't do well. Fergie Jenkins, Warren Spahn, each of them allowed some key runs with horrible ERAs. Smoltz had 5 innings of relief, 5 scoreless innings of relief. So he was maybe a bright spot. Juan Marichal and Steve Carlton, again, not terrible, but Marichal probably the best of the Wizards pitchers. In his 2 games, he was 1-0 with a 1.69 ERA. But again, Sutter kind of blew that one save. But so that's kind of where things ended up. Again, you can come out here and check out the stats if there's something you want to see that I didn't dig into. You can check out the season stats. You can check out the World Series stats. You can get, if you scroll down, you can get the little write-ups on each game here over on the side. You can see the games in order here. You can click on those to get the box score and the score sheet, along with all of the box scores and score sheets for the regular season as well. I'm currently in the process of getting things set up for another project. As I said in a prior video, I'm going to do a History Maker Baseball triple elimination tournament with the franchise teams for History Maker Baseball. And then I'm still planning on doing a project with Payoff Pitch just because I really enjoy the game so much. And now that I've gotten this 54-game season out of the way, I'm looking to do something else, probably with the Hall of Famers or some combination thereof. I haven't quite landed on that yet. So keep watching if you want to see that. Anyway, with all that said, this kind of wraps up the season. If you want to check things out, come on out here, baseballmaelstrom.com. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the season and of the World Series. And be sure to click the like button if you like this video. Consider subscribing so you don't miss future action on my future projects. And until next time, have a great evening.